Hey, thanks for tuning in to this One Cool Thing podcast on Google Sheets. The spreadsheet is a teacher's friend. Clicked on this link, at least you're somewhat interested in Sheets. I find that a lot of people get kind of intimidated by Excel or Google Sheets because frankly, it has a lot of functionality. There's a lot of bells and whistles that can get really overwhelming. But don't be. You can do this. No matter how much experience you have with Google Sheets, anybody can use it and get the benefit of it. So the purpose of this video is to first of all explain why I think the spreadsheet is a teacher's friend and go over some of the basic functionality and also share out a little tool that could give you some ideas to use in the classroom. So why do I say the spreadsheet is a teacher's friend? Well, because Sheets, whether it's Excel or in this case Google Sheets, are powerful ways of sorting and analyzing data. Now, why would you get data? Where would that data come from? In a previous session, I did a session on 7 powerful ways to use Google Forms. Now, if you'd like to see this presentation deck that I'm on right now, this Word document, this bit.ly will take you to it. And what I've done is I've described how they could be used, and I even create templates that you can click on. It'll ask you to make a copy, and you can totally steal. And so you can use them for tracking student work during independent projects, which I'm going to use this as my example today, doing concept checks, tracking your own work, creating rubrics, exit tickets, assessment debriefs after kids have taken the test, and even collecting data once a semester. And so up here you can see what some of these could look like. So in all of these examples, students would be submitting via a form, and all of the data would be spit out in the responses, but then you can then export that, there's another little button I'll show you, into a spreadsheet. And once it's in a spreadsheet, then you can sort and do a lot of analysis. And this is where it's your best friend. So here's an example where a spreadsheet could be generated from a weekly exit ticket, where a kid is just saying, you know, what period they're in, what did they work on that week, what did they learn, what did they struggle with, what are their next steps, right? You could have unit feedback. So this could be for yourself. So once a unit, you go through, and every time you know how like we do a lab or an activity and something goes well, but something really sucked. Well, this is our way of we could use our own form to collect our own data on what worked well and what didn't. And then next year when you're prepping for it, you could go to that spreadsheet and look at those responses. So here you can kind of help collect your own data for yourself. Here's an example where students could be doing a concept check. So for a unit, you spell out, so you pick the unit, and you would spell out what are the core concepts, and then have students at the beginning of the unit rate their understanding from 1, I don't understand it at all, to 10, know it well enough to teach. Have them rate themselves along that continuum at the beginning of the unit. You could do this midway through the unit, and then at the end, they could recap. And then you would get that data and be able to track their growth over time, even if it's just self-reported growth. Say after an assessment, right after a test, they go through, they look at their test, what went well, what didn't go well, what did they get wrong and why. All of this information they self-report. That's helpful for them, but then you can actually look at that data and be able to sort based on which questions they got wrong the most, or how did their perception match reality. You could sort based on all these different parameters. The example I want to give is this idea of project tracking. So if you do any sort of projects in your class, students are going to be working independently, and it's always this balancing act of checking in with them and giving them the support they need, but not interfering with the work that they're doing. And so I created a form where students can, at the beginning of class, open up this form. So they're doing this every day, and they are giving an update. So they're going to put in the date, the period, which here I'll show you what it would actually look like for them. They're going to pick the date, the period, they'd write their name. Today, I will. So they would say what they're going to work on, and then they would rate their status. Red light, I'm stuck, I can't progress without meeting with you first. I'm a yellow light, I'm having challenges, but I'm managing, versus green light. Basically, leave me alone, I'm working just fine, right? So every student, start of class, they complete this project tracking form, takes them 2 minutes. As a teacher, I then pull up this data. So I'm going to go to responses, and this number might be really big. So here's where I'm going to go to the spreadsheet. I'm going to say create this spreadsheet, and it's going to spit out this data. So here's where the spreadsheet is your friend. So I went through and I just played around, but you can see it gave me a timestamp, but then it also put today's date. I have the period, name, today I will, and my status. So here's where some of the features of sheets come into play, and here's where I want to teach you some of the overview. First of all, I want to know the red lights, right? Who are my red lights? Who are the kids that I need to see right away? So here's where one of the really powerful tools is to use the sorting feature. So I want to know the red lights in first period on February 4th. So I'm going to go up to data, and actually I got to highlight my range. So I'm going to click on timestamp, come all the way down to here. I'm going to go data, sort, range. So first of all, I want to say data has a header row, and I want to know today, first of all, today's date. I want to sort by date. Now if I do Z to A, it'll be the most recent, right? Then I'm going to say add a sort column. Next, I want to know my current status, right? Or actually, take that back. First, I want to do first period. So I'm going to say period, and then I'm going to say my current status. And I'm going to hit sort. So boom, now it's sorted based on the date and the period. And so now I know, well, at least from period 6, here are my periods. I would be able to, and you can kind of see how if I had more data, this would be better. But now I could be able to sort and see all my red lights on the particular day and the particular period that I want. Maybe I'm wanting to follow up with what my student has been doing over time. So now I'm going to actually I just want to sort and see how Christopher Ory's been doing. So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to sort A to Z, and then I'm going to find Christopher Ory, and I'm going to look at his data. And so you could say over the course of a project, you could track not only what was he doing, but how was his status throughout? Was he a green light? What did he say he was doing all of his stuff all along, or was he a red light and he was struggling the whole time? So here's where you can start sorting. So sorting is, I would argue, the most powerful tool in a spreadsheet. A lot of this data is qualitative, but typically data that you're getting in a spreadsheet is quantitative. There's some sort of number that you could sort. And so here's where, if you highlight this data and you want to know, what's the average of this data? Well, there's 2 different ways you could do it. One, you can come down here, click on this little icon, you could say, what's the average? Highlight all these. My average is a 1.4. Another way you can do this is by coming here, come down to this little icon, and now you can actually see the sum, the average, min, max, count. There's 7 entries, and the numbers. So that's pretty cool. So going back to our agenda here, let me make sure I'm staying on track. So in this session, you'll be able to answer the question, why would I use Google Sheets anyway? Review basic functions. So you'll notice that when you're in Sheets, there are kind of 2 kind of basic functions. One are going to be the typical buttons you're used to seeing if you use Google Docs or Google Slides or any of the other apps. You're going to recognize some of the same features, like the share button, how you add collaborators. You'll see the comment feature. You'll see the sidebar with linking to your calendar and keep and tasks. You'll recognize, the title and, ability to move and star, and even some of the file menu will be similar, like the help and the file edit and view. But then there's obviously some very specific buttons that are specific to Google Sheets. So we'll just kind of move across the bar. So you can format cells so that they have, format as currency or percentages. You can, if you have numerical data with decimals, you could be moving the decimal place. You can also edit all sorts of other data. So here I have dates. Say I wanted to change that format, I could change that format. You can obviously change fonts and size, all the usual stuff you're probably familiar with. You can either change the color of the text, or you can change the fill. Those are pretty ugly colors. You can say you were going to print it out later. You could add borders. Say I wanted to create another cell or set of tables down here. I can merge cells. I can click on this little icon right here, and now that becomes one cell. I could also have done that by coming up here to merge cells. You can change the orientation of it. So say you have data. I always like data to be in the middle, so you can use this. You can change the size of cells. If you double click on the line, it'll auto size to the size of the text. So that's a quick way to do that. Say you have a cell that's really big and you don't like all that dead space. You can come to this right here and you can move it to the middle, or you can move it to the top. Say you have a table that is, a column that is spilling into other columns. If you highlight that and come here, I use this all the time. This is the wrap text. And now you could resize it to your liking, so then it'll all fit within that width. Say you have a title here, you want to export this and you just want to make it look a little nicer. You can go diagonal, and whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back, and I'm going to say I want this orientation right here. So, and again, Command Z, I'm going to go back. So you have all these formatting ways that you can use. By the way, you can also comment within a cell, right? So if you're collaborating with others or you want to make a note for yourself, you have the ability to add charts. I'm not going to get into that today, and there's filters, all these other different things. So fundamentally, if you're using forms, you're going to get all sorts of data. Once you have data, the biggest thing that you're going to want to do is to be able to sort that data however you want, to be able to look for the trends that you're looking for. And then a lot of these features up here just help kind of clean up the data if you were to need it. And in some cases you won't need that. Other cases it could be really helpful. Going back to our agenda, kind of talked about some of the different formatting. Inserting links. You want to insert a link. That is this icon right here. So much like you would use in a Google Doc, common feature. And so functions, I guess I showed that. So you can use that by either just typing equals, and then you can type in all the different types of functions, or you could choose it from up here, and there's all sorts. Sum, average, count, max, and min are the most common. So the last thing, the last two things I want to show you. One is this external URL I want to show you called Flippity. So I love how they have provided all these different ways you can use Google Spreadsheets and to create all sorts of other cool stuff, from flashcards to a random name generator to badges to crossword puzzles, you name it. So check out Flippity.net if some of these look kind of appealing to you. And then the last thing to show you is a GIF from Jake Miller that's gone viral, honestly, I think a couple different times. He shows how you can use Google Sheets to do Google Translate. So here he's basically using a function, Google Translate, to translate terms into, say, Spanish or Chinese or Arabic, French, German, all these other different languages. That's a really cool feature. So you kind of get the idea that Google Sheets can be used in all sorts of neat ways, and it's worth checking out. That's why I say it is your friend. So if you want to play around with some of these data sets, you can check out my bit.ly. If you want to explore some of those different forms, get some ideas, please check that out. I hope that's been helpful. Thanks for your time. See ya.